The Trump administration investigating the massive fraud in Minnesota, and at the same time, the congresswoman representing Minneapolis. President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "I am sending Tom Homan to Minnesota tonight. He's not been involved in that area, but knows and likes many of the people there. Tom is tough but fair and will report directly to me." Separately, a major investigation is going on with respect to the massive $20 billion plus welfare fraud that has taken place in Minnesota and is at least partially responsible for the violent, organized protests going on in the streets. Additionally, the DOJ and Congress are looking at Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who left Somalia with nothing and is now reportedly worth more than $44 million. Time will tell all. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, according to the New York Times, the Justice Department initiated an investigation into Congresswoman Omar during the Biden administration in June of 2024 over her, quote, finances, campaign spending, and interactions with a foreign citizen. The investigation had reportedly stalled, according to that report, and she has denied any wrongdoing. Her husband's investment firm, though, Rose Lake Capital, had only $42.44 in its bank account as of 2022. House financial disclosure showed it was worth up to $25 million just 2 years later. Same thing with a winery and marijuana farm that he has since abandoned. It also went from less than $1,000 in valuation to $5 million in less than a year. Joining us this morning to discuss is former prosecutor and attorney Jeremy Eldridge. Good morning to you, sir. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So a House Oversight Committee has said they're going to, weigh whether to subpoena Omar and her husband and talk about some of the business ventures as well. Let's start there, because this also has to do with that massive multi-billion-dollar fraud scandal in Minneapolis. What are lawmakers looking for here, and what culpability could she have?
They're chasing two things, and there's obviously smoke, but I'm not so sure there's fire here. The first thing they're chasing is the obvious sudden wealth that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's family now maintains. They're trying to find out, were there going to be a connection between any of the welfare fraud, for instance, and her family? Did she personally profit from it? But they're going to have to show bank records or some level of a benefit. The second thing they're chasing is whether the filings that she's done as a congresswoman, those ethics filings that requiring scrutiny, whether any of those are problematic. Those two different paths could lead towards culpability and potentially criminal liability.
Okay, so speaking of filings, there's also this thing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, which involved Omar's husband, companies that suddenly show this huge valuation on paper we talked about. Talk about the legal risks here if he's managing other people's money and skipped required registration.
Now, normally one of the things we're looking for as a former prosecutor is we're looking at actual realized loss. In some of the situations that they've looked into, although there has definitely been an allegation of fraud, or for instance, taking money from investors in the marijuana venture and then not necessarily doing anything with that money, those monies were in fact paid back going into 24 and into 2025. So the U.S. Attorney's Office is unlikely necessarily, if there was no realized loss, to actually prosecute those cases. But once again, if they did it once, did they do it again?
Right.
There were several other ventures where this exact issue came to light, which is taking money, not doing anything with it. Were they using it for something else, or were they engaging in misconduct with the money? And that's what they're going to be looking into.
Also, this information about Omar already under investigation by the DOJ in 2024. Again, this is all according to the New York Times. Is a detail not many people had known about. This had not really been revealed that widely. How serious is this, especially given the report states it could have been about her interactions with a foreign citizen?
Anytime that you mix what I would say is working with a foreign national, funds where we don't necessarily know their whereabouts, and extreme wealth in a short amount of time, there are going to be national security concerns. And as a congresswoman, she's under incredible scrutiny, much different than any other business owner, because not only does she have access to high-level information and a clearance that a lot of us don't have, but what is she doing with that information? Is that information being used to profit either in the United States or other business entities outside of the United States? And that's where her ethics forms are going to come under scrutiny. And that's where some of her emails and potentially other communications could also be reviewed. But it's stalled under a Democratic president. So I don't know whether politics is the agenda here,
But
there wasn't enough last time. We'll see if there's enough this time.
It was under a Democratic president, so when you talk about politics in that particular situation, we just don't know in this case. However, to your point, does it also extend to her husband? If her husband was the one who might have had interactions with a foreign agent, because she is a sitting member of Congress?
Of course. In fact, the stronger case may end up being against her husband, seeing as how it's his name on all of the business paperwork, and it's his name who's the individual who's been receiving a lot of the monies that are in question. As for the Congresswoman, she doesn't face any extra punishment for simply being a Congresswoman. It's the fact that because she's a Congresswoman, a lot of her financial information ends up being a lot more available to the U.S. Attorney's Office because of the reporting requirements. So they may end up using her to nab her husband, so to speak.
All right, former prosecutor and attorney Jeremy Eldridge, we appreciate you joining us this morning here on the National News Desk.
Thank you.